suitable hydration. And the question from a local Seattle resident was, are 2 pumpkin spice lattes suitable hydration? To which the Department of Health logged off of Twitter. So that's what we're doing over here. Suitable hydration. To which the Department of Health logged off of Twitter. So
reverb.
I know, it looks like we're live on YouTube now.
That's awesome.
So welcome everyone to the first streaming and live MLflow Office Hours. We have a wonderful panel of maintainers of MLflow. We have Corey, and today Jen looks a lot like Ben Wilson. So I'll let them introduce themselves a little bit, and we'll start taking questions.
Fantastic. Hi, everyone. I'm Corey. I've been working on MLflow for about 4 years, and I'm a software engineer at Databricks, and really excited about ML ops and ML platforms.
Hi, I'm Ben. Been at Databricks almost the same time that Corey has, but I was in the field for a while and have an interesting job title at Databricks, which has nothing to do with what I do day to day. I work on the MLflow open source team and helping to maintain that and work on some stuff. Yeah, before Databricks was a data scientist, ML engineer. So yeah, thanks for dialing in and listening to us.
It makes you sound like you have a mysterious and storied past. So we're gonna have to like tap into that expertise from being out in the field.
Absolutely.
We actually got a question from our Slack about contributing to MLflow. It was from someone who doesn't have a lot of coding experience, but is really excited to contribute. And they're asking what might they be able to add to the project? And they suggest maybe documentation. What do you guys think about people starting to contribute and like what good places could be?
I'd say the best place to look, and we're trying to get better with this internally, the maintainer group, of tagging issues that are filed as good first issues. Some of them are things that we create. And I don't know, maybe we need another tag as well that targets this demographic. Usually good first issues are things that you can knock out in maybe a couple of hours. It's good to get you sort of accustomed to how MLflow is laid out and what the process is for dev, and making a commit and pushing a PR and getting feedback, and how stringent sometimes the maintainers can be with feedback and responding to that. But there's also things that are tagged that are not really code related. They are documentation, or like, hey, can you add something that we're going to define exactly what we want to change? Here's an example. Can you just find everywhere in the code that this is like this and change it to this? And those are great getting started.
Absolutely. I'd also like to call out that we have a lot of these items on our roadmap, the latest MLflow public roadmap, and specifically a lot of items around documentation and examples. So I think that's a really great way to contribute, is to try out MLflow as a user, or if you've already been using it for a while and this is your first time contributing, that's also excellent, because you can use some of that experience and put together a notebook example or write out a script that uses MLflow in a particular way. And that just helps everybody else kind of understand how to work with the platform. So would really recommend checking out that roadmap. It's a GitHub milestone on our repository, and finding some examples and docs items there.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that both of you called out that these good first issues are also a great chance to figure out like what it means to engage with maintainers, what the standards are in process. And I think that's a great call out, because even if you can kind of bang out that code in like a day or two, it's still intimidating to like push your code to a project and jump through all the hoops, make sure you have the right testing framework. If someone's a little bit intimidated by that, like what would you suggest? Like, should they go to the Slack, GitHub discussions? Should they just put it in their pull requests? Like,
speaking from personal experience, I would say put your ego into a box for a little while, and then tuck your fear in with that as well, and realize that nobody's here judging you. Like, this is an open source project that maintainers are welcoming assistance, and we want more contributors. We want people to feel like they're owning this and helping to make it grow and themselves grow as well. And that's a great way to grow, is putting your code out there and having it get eviscerated. And it's not an attack. And I know a lot of people can take it as that, like, oh man, this Corey Zumara guy just obliterated my PR and I feel like such an idiot. He's not thinking that. He's like, hey, I just want to make your PR good because it's for the project, and this is how you learn. This is how you get better. So don't be afraid. We're nice. But if you don't want to do it in a public forum on a pull request, which maybe if you really can't figure anything out with how to get started on something, that hit us on Slack, like at us on Slack. We're all on there, and we're getting better at responding very quickly to personal requests to that. So we're always available.
100%.
Just don't request Corey's input because he'll eviscerate you. Everyone else is really nice, but this guy, tough customer.
If you want to get better at coding, have Corey do your PRs. Guaranteed.
No, for sure.
The whole team here. What I'll say about it is that sort of your contribution is the most important thing. Like the fact that folks are willing to put up code for review is 90% of the battle, and we're more than happy to help with the remaining 10% of making what are generally minor adjustments just to get it merged. Like, the goal of the project, as Ben said, is to get to a state where we have a platform that represents the use cases of all data scientists and machine learning engineers, and that doesn't happen unless people can successfully contribute. So, while there might be significant feedback sometimes on code, like, absolutely nothing personal. It's just that last mile effort to make sure that everybody's awesome contributions make their way into our code base, and we're super excited about it. So thank you for all the contributions you've made, and excited about the ones you will make.
Definitely. I mean, if someone takes the time to give extensive feedback, I mean, it means they thought your contribution was worth that effort. So, and it's some of the best ways to learn quickly from experienced devs who have worked throughout the framework and can really help your contribution be impactful. And when in doubt, you can always make an alternative GitHub profile with an anonymous username, and you can be like, it's kittycat72 that's a terrible coder, not me. And also, don't look at any of kittycat72's pull requests; those are not mine. Anyways,
one thing
forward.
I'd add to the discussion with regards to somebody getting started with how to avoid a large pull request feedback. Even if you are a seasoned dev and you've been around the block, if you are going to commit to, more than 4 hours of your time to solving something, it's a really good idea to ask in the issue or file an issue with an idea, like a feature request, just to get input from the maintainers of like, hey, is this in the direction that you want to go with the project, before you sink 6 weeks of your life into an 8,000 line PR that would just need to be refactored completely anyway. So save yourself some time and effort, and we're always incredibly enthused to have that discussion with anybody who comes up with an idea that wants to contribute.
100%. And also, we try our best to make sure that something like that can land. So even if the feature ultimately changes slightly in scope, or the implementation that was initially proposed changes in nature, we generally try to find a way to make it work and to get that into the code base. So that discussion is super valuable. It's a great point, Ben.
And for looking for good first issues and things to contribute, Corey mentioned the roadmap. Where's that roadmap headed? And what are some things you're really excited about on there?
Absolutely. So that roadmap is at this point tailored to making it easier for folks to kind of understand how to work with MLflow's different components. So smoothing out some of the API interactions, for example, around like file management and artifact management in MLflow, and providing sort of a lot more examples that we think adhere to like 2022 best practices in MLOps and data science. So that was our primary motivation in putting it together. We are really excited about pieces of it, like having hosted MLflow Docker containers so people can easily spin up the platform as opposed to kind of reasoning about orchestrating Docker on their own. We also have some exciting work going on around making sure that folks can use all components of MLflow with any piece of backend storage. So finally pulling in file store support for model registry, really just making the platform sort of more accessible and sort of as friction-free as possible is the theme here. We also have a lot of exciting feature work for platform extensions and sort of eye-catching new ideas as well in the works, and a lot of that will be seen in our next public roadmap. So really excited to be moving forward with iterative roadmaps on a quarterly basis. It's a good place to be.
My gosh, eye-catching new features. This is quite the tease.
Yeah,
but
yeah. It'll
okay.
It'll all become apparent
in due time. So
There you
don't miss office hours, otherwise you'll miss out on eye-catching new features. You heard it here first. What about you, Ben? Are you excited about anything on the roadmap, or as we get closer to an MLflow 2.0 release? It's something that we talked about during the Data and AI Summit. I know there's a lot of great things that we're starting to put out there for that.
I mean, I've always been excited about a next major release of something that I've contributed to, because it allows the team to go back and fix stuff they couldn't fix. Like breaking changes, fixing those, sometimes they're nuisance things where you're like, oh, it's super annoying that we have to have this workaround for this thing because, we didn't realize it was going to be a problem at that time. And on a major release, you can say, hey, you know what? This API is getting completely changed, and this is the new standard. We try to make it backwards compatible if possible, but some things are like, hey, we have to fix this because it just sucks. And it's really nice to be able to do stuff like that. But one of the things with that I'm really excited about with like templates and pipelines is that the future work on engaging more people outside of exclusively software engineers contributing to MLflow, providing that sort of framework out there to say, hey, somebody has this idea of a way to do a Bayesian optimization solution with a pipeline. Are the maintainers going to build that? Probably not, because we're not experts in hidden Markov chain processes for doing that. There's people out there, usually data scientists and ML engineers, who do that for a living in a company, and having them give them the ability to use the tooling that is provided to say, hey, here's a good solution that we have. Could you check our code and make sure that it's good? And then we can publish this. That, I think, really excites me about what 2.0 is going to enable.
Absolutely. Expanding kind of the core platform into an ecosystem of best practice tools and workflows for model development, model deployment, production, machine learning applications is an extremely exciting aspect of MLflow 2.0. I can't wait for it.
No, definitely. I think that sounds great. So MLflow is going to become easier to use, more like intuitive as we fix some of these APIs that have been nagging people in the community, and there's going to be a better chance to share best practices across people in the community, across teams. That's going to save a lot of people work. We're all going to feel like experts in hidden Markov chain models, which is something I've long dreamed of.
And we should be. It's that whole term, I guess maybe it's a cliche at this point, like democratizing AI. Like it really starts with anybody being able to pick up and bootstrap something that they might not understand at a deep technical level, but use it effectively to satisfy a use case. So I'd love to be an expert in all sorts of things. And I think that the way that we're going will actually make me realize my dream and you yours, Jim. It's a good thing.
Hopefully. No, I totally agree. Because like you can look back a few years when it was really difficult to like make a deep learning model just because the tooling wasn't there or it was just so difficult to use. There'd be, PhD theses of someone, building and, training a model. And that would be the whole, like 4 years plus. And now that's something that, the average, somewhat sophisticated user can pull off the shelf and put together something that's, really powerful and like useful for solving their problems. So I think this is going really in a great direction for just, extending a person's capabilities and what they can do day to day.
I like that term from the two-way street take on it, democratizing data science work. Because if the tooling is sophisticated enough or enabling enough, you can take somebody from a software engineering background who doesn't need to have the in-depth data science and statistics background to be able to use a model like with a service that sort of automates some of that aspect of it. Like, hey, I know my data is clean. I know I need to do these pre-processing steps. I have this pipeline template that I'm using. Just build me a model and tell me if this is worthwhile pursuing as a project. And then on the other side, that other side of the street is the data scientist or statistician or mathematician or physicist who knows all of that, the internals of how these models work and why they work the way they do, who is just like, I don't have time to learn how to build a framework or wouldn't even know where to begin. So sort of a two-way street. And that's really exciting to see that this project is moving towards that direction.
That's really true. And not just, your software engineer, but like any sort of qualitatively focused like researcher or person who has just that like deep domain knowledge and like intuitive understanding of their subject matter that doesn't necessarily have that technical training, like being able to have some guidance about best practices and being able to really narrow in on the right question with their background knowledge. Like I think it's going to unlock a lot of collaborations that just weren't possible before because there's too much friction. So yeah, it's going to be exciting to see.
100%. I think a lot of the initial motivation behind MLflow 1.x was how do we give data scientists a platform so they don't have to worry about infrastructure and software things. And 2.0 is largely how do we make data scientists better data scientists. It's a fun paradigm shift and really the next logical step, I think, in the evolution of ML platforms.
That's right. We're all about logic here. So and take this one step at a time. When you look at the templates that are part of MLflow pipelines, what are kind of the next steps you think for achieving that vision? Like, what are some of the things that you'd like to see added in, or some community like input on? Going forward, I'm sure there's a lot of requests for feedback and iteration that's going on.
Absolutely. So the things that we're looking at in the very near term are sort of support for more types of model development use cases. So we started with regression, and that regression pipeline that's out there, it does a lot. For example, you have a nice paradigm for ingesting data, splitting it and profiling it in a sound and correct manner, as Ben was talking about. You have support for building models of different architectures, and then ultimately getting them ready for production by placing them in a model registry. But I think even within that pipeline, we want to add things like support for AutoML and hyperparameter tuning, which really provides a nice off-the-shelf way to get a good model without being a seasoned expert. So that's huge. Model types beyond regression are obviously important. So we're looking at classification as a next step. I think personally that forecasting and getting some deep learning support in there is also going to be really useful. And beyond that, what we're really excited about is to rapidly grow this ecosystem of templates. Right now we have one. We'd like to have 50 or 100, And the best way to get there, I think, is by opening up some of our tools that we have for pipeline development and giving them to data scientists and MLOps experts and having other folks build and contribute pipelines. So we're really excited about that direction. We'll start with a nice foundation of tools that we know are well built and really useful for data scientists and MLOps engineers. And then we'll quickly grow from there. And by this time next year, hopefully everybody has a pipeline that fits their use case off the shelf.
That's awesome. It sounds like there's room for the next person who contributes a template to say they doubled the number of templates available in MLflow, which would be a very impressive thing to put on, your bio. So
there you go. As with most things, there's a great growth opportunity when you're starting from one.
Yeah, just leave that part out. That's my advice.
Sure. Yep.
Kitty Cat 72, you're amazing. Doubling? You've come a long way from that first terrible PR. So
I think we got a live question.
Oh, well, let's answer it. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Hi, folks. Do you see MLflow expanding in the dataset tracking direction, like one offered by DVC? So I think that's data version control.
Mm-hmm. That's an awesome question. I can take a stab at it. I'll go ahead and start with the first one. So we're referring to the one about concept drift here. And I think that right now the best options available, as the question asker kind of inferred, is to store that data content in MLflow tracking. Sort of centralizing the data and checking in new data over time from production. And then ultimately, like at this point, you do have to kind of write a script to fetch those files back, compare the data sets, sort of compute your own statistics. But we think that this is a case that we're planning to tackle with pipelines, and like is a very natural fit for a pipeline. So starting with an input that is some production model endpoint and another input that is how that model that is in production was trained, and then executing that pipeline and ultimately retrieving a snapshot of how that production endpoints sort of received data compares to the training data, and automatically computing a lot of those summary statistics and providing insights into that sort of data drift. So we're actively thinking about that, and I think with this kind of open API for building pipeline steps and templates, this will come really quickly. But yeah, tracking right now for sort of in the MLflow 1.x land is the best way. 2.0, I think, will have a much better story.
Entirely shameless plug, but this exact use case is one of the last chapters in my book. So if you really want to know how to do this in hard mode, Machine Learning Engineering in Action by Manning, written by me, Ben Wilson. There's an entire chapter devoted with all of the code required to use the tracking APIs and model registry, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff with MLflow, but it uses basically all of MLflow in order to do drift detection. Not just concept drift, there's other drift detections in there as well, but there's an automated retraining as well. So it'll do passive retraining.
Yeah, no, I think definitely check out the book, and you should get from Amazon, because as a Seattleite, I like to support local businesses. And yeah, I also think it's a great call out, because it's sort of a problem that you can completely solve with the current tooling. It's just that there's not a consensus pattern across the community. It'd be hard to hand off that approach to someone else and be speaking the same language without some coordination. I think that's really what pipelines and templates are going to solve for us. Like, we have a very powerful toolkit here that can accomplish a lot of these things with slight modifications or conventions, but it's really a pain to have to explain those conventions or have slightly different conventions with someone else that you want to work with. So being able to point to a template that's published somewhere and say, hey, this is Ben Wilson's DVC approach from his book, available where fine books are sold. And we can go off that. It's gonna save everyone a lot of time and make it clearer what some solid approaches are. So that's awesome.
And with pipelines, that code would be 1/10 the size that it is, at least. I mean, you'll see if you look in the book, you're like, wow, it's like 1,400 lines of code just to do that one little thing. That's the whole idea of like packaging all of that up and saying, hey, here's a standard template, like, step of, I need to do what Corey just said. Like, hey, I need to predict my priors on training and see what it looks like versus recent stuff, and then calculate statistics on that. That should be a cookie cutter type thing. Like, hey, we have a module that we can just put in here that just does that thing, and greatly simplify that.
Fantastic. And the second question is like a really common issue that folks are running into, and one that at this point does require a fair bit of manual effort as well. So a lot of times data scientists and folks will start using MLflow on their local machine and then want to make the transition into a kind of cloud hosted solution, for example, or on-prem, or kind of wherever MLflow is running externally to their laptop. And currently, the artifact location of a run in an experiment is part of its metadata. So I'm assuming when we're talking about tracking URI, like we're talking about where those model files are located, because that's defined in file stores meta.yaml. And so the first step there is, at this point, the people that are attempting to access that data will need to take those files and move them into the current storage location that they're using for other experiment data in MLflow. So you want to like create a fresh, like, new experiment that inherits the same artifact location defined by MLflow server, and then move like the actual artifact files into that new experiment. That can often mean like relogging the runs. So we don't have kind of an automated approach for this, for sort of migrating between open source like MLflow stores at this point, but we would be like extremely thrilled to work with you on a tool to do this in an automated way. I think the probably best place to go from here is to get a GitHub issue created, and I'll take care of that. So I'll go ahead and file a feature request for an automated tool here. But I think the best solution right now, unfortunately, is to create that experiment with its own artifact location, and then kind of read the run data locally, log it to that new experiment using MLflow start run log artifact, and hopefully once that's written, it can be kind of reused and contributed to MLflow.
It can take a while if you're using straight Python APIs. I still have, I wouldn't call them nightmares, but remembrances of having to migrate 173,000 experiments for one of our customers from their local MLflow into our MLflow. It took some time.
Absolutely. With like, assuming that you're coming from a file store, like there is the potential to just copy those run directories. If you're going to a file store, like file store to file store might make your life a lot easier. You have a bunch of run directories. You can copy them into the new experiment directory on the different host, and maybe use some regex and batch replace, and like swap out the old artifact location with the new one. Like that could absolutely work. Going from file store, for example, to a SQL database, a little bit harder. That's where probably your best option is the Python API to make the transition. Yeah.
Yeah, so doable, but let's work on that pull request or the feature request.
We really should.
We should have a tool that does that.
Mm-hmm.
That's officially part of MLflow.
Awesome. Well, any final thoughts?
Just really excited about growing the contributor community. So if you haven't had the chance to contribute to MLflow, you've been thinking about it, even if this is your first time hearing about the project, please check out our GitHub repository. Have a whole list of good first issues. I think there's almost 50 of them at this point. We have an exciting roadmap that you can contribute to. Lots of sort of gentle first tasks around documentation and examples. So we can't wait to work with you to make MLflow a better offering.
Absolutely. And if you need any more immediate feedback, definitely jump on the Slack and ask your question. We check in and love to help you out.
And if you really want to get our attention, at us on Slack or direct message with an @ we'll get notified at that time. We're not, we have full-time jobs, so we're not just constantly with Slack open all the time on another organization. So that's probably the best way.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for being on for Office Hours, and we'll see you guys all in 2 weeks.
See you in 2 weeks. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Ben.
Later.
Bye.